Whatever I say is meant for the public's ears. Yeah. How are you feeling, Jim?
That's good.
Sounds good.
It's our Christmas present.
Well, for the roofing. It's not part of your Christmas gift.
That's an interesting present.
Going to give you a little roofing.
Just the first installment home. Getting up to
You stick around, you'll do your I guess the whole roof done. That's cute.
Who said there wasn't perks in public office?
Yeah, there's, yes.
I don't think anything.
I knew that, but I just wanted to make sure you did. Me not. I feel sorry.
You,
I think we're ready.
I think
We'll go ahead and call the Board of Education meeting together. We do have a quorum. In fact, everybody on the board is here. And so we'll go ahead with the invocation. You would?
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for another day, another blessing, and we just ask that tonight as we meet together to discuss the business of the district, that you guide and direct us, that we do what's in the best interest for children and their education as we take our families and staff into consideration. Father, guide and direct us here tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Rivers, if you would.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we will have the election of the chair and vice chair for the next year. Dr. McLean will lead the nominations process for the chair, and then once the chair is elected, the new chair will then handle the vice chair election. So with that, we'll turn it over to you, Dr. McLean.
Good evening, and thank you, Chair Houlihan. In a moment, I will call for nominations for the office of Chair of the Granville County School Board of Education. Nominations do not require a second. If more than one person is nominated, the board will vote on nominees in order of nomination. The first person to receive a majority of board members present will be elected chair. Nominations are in order for the office of board chair, and I will keep them open until I close them. We will now open the floor for nominations for board chair. Are there any nominations? Mr. Udy.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Rivers.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate David Richardson.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations?
I move to be closed and say it too.
Thank you, Mr. Pease. If there are
second.
Thank you. I won't need a second. But if there are no more nominations at this time, the nominations for the office of board chair are closed. We will now vote on the nominations in the order in which they were received. Those in favor of Mr. Rob Rivers, say aye.
Aye.
Tell you what, will you raise your hands? Those in favor of Mr. Rob Rivers, will you raise your hands, please? 3. Those opposed, raise your hands, please.
No, I think we should do the other one.
Okay. Those in favor of Mr. Richardson. Raise your hand, please. Mr. David Richardson is elected chair with a vote of 4. At this time, I welcome Mr. David Richardson to the position of chair of Granville County Board of Education. Congratulations, Mr. David Richardson.
David, come on up.
Surprised you said in there that long.
Gavel is yours.
Mr. Rich, make him take his name, will you?
You know, that would make sense. But it says chair or vice chair, so it's really not legal.
We'll fix
But
that.
at least they'll know who you are.
That's
I thank you for your support. We'll move now to the nominations that are in order for the office of vice chair. We will use the same procedure. Are there any nominations for vice chair? Mr. Rivers?
Nominate Mr. Danny Udy.
All right. Are there other nominations?
I move the nominations be closed.
Got a second.
All right. All right. Seeing there's no other nominations, will you approve this by acclamation?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Mr. Udy, thank you, sir, for serving. All right. Moving into our agenda, you have seen the minutes that are on board docs. When you've had a moment, we'll take a motion and a second, or if there are any corrections to those minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve this. That's not it.
We have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Madam Superintendent, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No adjustments to the agenda this evening.
Okay. Board members? All right. First up is our consent items. You've seen the information on field trips there. This requires your approval per board policy. Is there any discussion on this? Take a motion that we approve the consent items.
I make a motion that we can approve the field trip consent items.
I second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Now we'll do our special recognitions.
Wonderful. If you will join us at the red carpet, please.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight is my pleasure to start our special recognitions tonight with a very special student. Kalia Bowman, will you please come forward? Miss Kalia is an 11th grader at South Granville High School. She is being recognized tonight for her excellence in ACT preparation. Ms. Bowman took it upon herself, despite the challenges in her personal life, to make the time for this very important work in setting plans for her life after South Granville High School. Kalila led her school and the county in the mastery of nearly 500 new ACT vocabulary words since the beginning of the school year. She has mastered the most words in her school and district so far and is on her way to winning a free parking pass for her senior year. Congratulations, Ms. Kalila. We are very proud of you. Let's give her a big round of applause. And Ms. Clea, if you would please, we're going to get you for a photograph if you'll continue right on around. Thank you. All right, so next it is my pleasure to recognize 4 very special students who recently participated in our District 2019 Holiday Card Contest. These 4 students were selected as winners from a field of more than 3 dozen applications or submissions from across the district. And we'll be showing images of their cards during our superintendent's remarks later this evening. But our first winner is River Brogdon, 3rd grader from Wilton Elementary School. Our next winner is Miss Neftali Santamaria, 11th grader at J.F. Webb High School. Absent. Next, we have Connor Rice, 10th grader from J.F. Webb HLS, Miss Ophelia Staton's art class. And lastly, we have Dalilia Gonzalez Lopez, 12th grader from South Granville High School for Ms. Shay Brower's art class. So let's give all of our students one final round of applause. All right, we're going to transition to our staff recognitions, and I believe we may have an absence or 2 tonight. But first, we'd like to recognize Ms. Bethany Young. Ms. Young, who I believe is not here, is absent? Okay. She is a finalist for the North Carolina Center in Advancement of Teaching Beginner Teacher of the Year for the state of North Carolina. Yeah, pretty special. Ms. Young is a science teacher for Granville Academy, and she was one of 27 finalists to be chosen from across all public schools and charter schools in the entire state. And she will be attending a special conference this week in Cullowhee, North Carolina, where we hope Thursday night, I believe, is the big announcement. So fingers crossed for Bethany. Okay, next we have a recognition for Miss Stacy Mendenhall, who I believe was also unable to join us tonight. She was recently recognized at the State Exceptional Children Programs Conference as the 2019-2020 Educator of Excellence for Granville County Public Schools. So a big congratulations to Ms. Mendenhall. All right, next we're going to recognize some principals. And these are some pretty special ones. These principals have been recognized and awarded monetary bonuses by the state of North Carolina for their school's outstanding academic performance in the 2018-2019 school year. The performance indicator was determined by the school's EVOS Academic Growth Index, and it was ranked as compared to schools across the state. So our first person being recognized tonight is Principal Jackie Harris, Granville Early College High School. Get this. Her students performed in the top 10% of growth across the state. And she is receiving a bonus of $10,000 from the state of North Carolina. All right. Our next principal being recognized this evening is Ms. Janita Allen of Granville Central High School. Congratulations, Ms. Allen. You're also being in the top 10% of exceeding growth across the entire state, and she too will be getting a check from the state for $10,000. Next, Ms. Sheila Atkins of Wilton Elementary School. Come on in, Ms. Atkins. Ms. Atkins has been recognized in the top 20% of exceeding growth, and she will receive a bonus of $2,500 from the state of North Carolina. And finally, we have Ms. Lisa Tusa from South Granville High School. Ms. Tusa, yes, come on in. Her school was in the top 50% across the state for growth, and she will receive a check for $1,000 for her academic growth. Congratulations. All right, we're going to move on to some special recognitions tonight. The following local business and industry leaders, municipal leaders, as well as post-secondary educational partners are being recognized for their expertise and commitment to the development of our career and technical education program here in Granville County Public Schools through their service on the CTE Business Advisory Council. We are grateful for their dedication and service to this effort. First, I'd like to recognize Dr. Brown, Vice President of Vance Granville Community College. Next, we have Ms. Cecilia Wheeler, Dean of Arts and Sciences at Vance Granville Community College. Next, we have Mr. Vincent Gilreath, unable to attend, from the Carr-Tar Regional Council of Governments. Someone I know who's here, Mr. Harry Mills, from the Granville County Economic Development Department. Mr. John Snow, the Chief Executive Officer of Granville Health Systems. Mr. Jeff Tengen from All Tech Industries Incorporated in Creedmoor. Mr. Hal Mutzel from Express Employment Professionals. Hal, thank you, sir. Come on in. Dr. Rachel Damaris, Vance Granville Community College President, is unable to join us this evening. Give her a round. And Tanya Weary, Vance Granville Community College Dean of the South Campus. Laura Hackney of Rice Wrap Industries in Creedmoor, unable to attend. Maurice Mo York, Revlon CEO, unable to attend. And Mary Yunt, City of Oxford Downtown Development Coordinator. Let's give all of those CT Advisory Group folks a big round of applause. All right, we're going to end our special recognitions and presentations with someone from the Granville Ed Foundation. You know, Granville County Public Schools receives considerable support each year in a variety of ways across all schools in our district from the Granville Ed Foundation. So in addition to supporting our core academics, the Granville Ed Foundation also supports artistic and cultural experiences for our students through a variety of grants and other special programs. This year, we're excited to announce that once again, each elementary school will receive a $1,000 grant, which our schools may be using for development of literacy in the manner that they see fit. This is aligned, of course, to our superintendent's 2020 vision, which focuses on increasing student performance in the area of literacy. So here to present checks tonight and provide a few brief words about the Granville Ed Foundation is the Executive Director, Ms. Jennifer Kufalo Carpenter. Ms. Carpenter.
Sorry, I sound a little hoarse. I'm trying to get over a little bit of bronchitis, so excuse me. We just did our prize patrol last Monday. I don't know if everybody saw the pictures on Facebook. We are proud to say that we had 62 grants submitted to us, and we were able to award 42 of those. With those, Granville County Public Schools received 38 of those grants. Oxford Prep received 2, and Falls Lake Academy received 2. So that is our breakdown of numbers for this year. We were very impressed with the amount that came in and the amount that we were also able to give out. Total for the grants so far this year was $60,000 given away last Monday. With our literacy initiative, we have given $11,000 to the schools this year, for Granville County schools as a whole. This is the first year Falls Lake and Oxford Prep both received $1,000, and Granville County Public Schools will get $9,000. So I'd like to present our big check to Granville County Public Schools for $9,000. Okay. Get in there and take pictures of this. All right. So, are all the principals here? Do you know? Okay, go ahead.
So, Ms. Charmaine Day-Heggie of Butler STEM Elementary School. Latisa McKnight, Creedmoor Elementary School of the Arts. Sherry Burns, C.G. Cradle Elementary School. Bill Graham, Granville Academy. Billy Moore, Mount Energy Elementary School. Teresa McGee, Stovall Shaw Elementary School. Courtney Curran, Tar River Elementary School. Sheila Atkins, Wilton Elementary School. And Bethany Bottomere, West Oxford Elementary School. Congratulations, principals, and thank you, Granville Ed Foundation, for all of your support. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our special recognitions for tonight.
Thank you all.
You doing all right, buddy?
Granville Foundation pays for a residency in this amazing clay artist. He was away for a week and 2 days thanks to Granville Foundation. And they've been working with clay and pottery.
That's nice.
Maybe next month or something.
That's
That's
nice.
nice.
Very
Oh,
nice.
is that what they made?
Thank you.
For
Yes.
you? You're
I
right.
guess. It's not fair.
Probably for Frankie for his birthday.
It's tomorrow, so I better take it home.
Hey, you got a present.
All right, board members, we've reached the point where we're going to hear from public comment. Dr. Winborn?
No one has signed up for public comment.
Okay. All right. Madam Superintendent, your report?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Just on the phone.
Good evening to our new board chair, our new vice chair, board members, guests, and friends in the audience, and all who've assembled. Since our last regular board meeting, a great deal has transpired. Nationally, Letterland Incorporated has published a blog post about our very own Tar River Elementary Parade, designed to showcase some of our extraordinary students and their involvement with letter and sound acquisition. If you'd like to learn more, please visit our website. It's pretty neat. Our district and board at the same time have been investigating workaround, restart, and personalization efforts. You're going to hear a little more about the personalization work with RTI tonight. We're doing this at some of our schools in our quest to move the academic needle. And several educators have been receiving grant awards for their submissions. For example, you've already heard about the Granville Ed Foundation distributing over 40 grants to Granville County Public Schools educators. And 3 of our teachers won grants from the North Carolina Bright Ideas grant competition last week. Ladies and gentlemen, we're definitely on the move. This evening, I'm also delighted to share that just last week, before the Thanksgiving holiday, I was honored to attend a beautiful ceremony for our very own local teen court, whereby we received a partnership award for our 10-year partnership with the court system in our community. This is an amazing program that has helped numerous students turn the corner positively, while encouraging and supporting others to consider professional careers in the legal field. I would like to personally thank all of the community volunteers and our students and our parents and those in the legal professions in our community. I'd like to also thank Mrs. Puryear and her office for their amazing work. Here is the plaque, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to have this in our lobby. It's incredible because this program has sort of died down in some communities, but this community has kept the light glowing for 10 years. So hats off to everyone who's been involved. Tonight, I would also like to thank New Jonathan Creek Missionary Baptist Church for their extremely kind donation of materials, supplies, and a financial donation made to West Oxford Elementary School. They, under the leadership of Reverend and Mrs. Anderson and Commissioner Jay, were all present for the giving last week. Our district continues to be on the move in a variety of ways, and we're excited about the undertaking to transform our schools and the partnerships helping make it happen. Through the intentional use of data rooms, increased levels of reading 20 minutes a day, having high expectations for all, and making certain to benchmark and gauge students' learning intermittently throughout the year, we are anticipating that these strategies are helping all students achieve. We hope you and your families are hearing about these initiatives. We are proud of our efforts. We are proud of our educators. We are proud of our principals and believe Granville County Public Schools is an amazing academic, athletic, and extracurricular option for student learners. Our options, face-to-face, blended, year-round, or traditional, are all really great choices because in our district we know no one size fits all. Mentioning such, let's not forget the arts. Stan, will you pull up those special cards? In our district, the arts mean something. Each year, and this is the third year we've done this, the arts have helped us create another level of competition for our district and community. Tonight, I'm pleased to share with you not only the winners themselves, but the result of their work. Our board and my office together have partnered with our schools in the holiday card competition. We thank all participants for their entries, and we want everyone to know that the submissions were all excellent. And the competition was so stiff this year that we did not launch into a first, second, and third place winner. Instead, we had 4 winners. So tonight, the winners have been presented from our elementary and our high school levels, and their work can be seen on the screen. This is River Brockton's card. Next. Here is Naphtali's card. Next. This is Connor's card. Take a look at those words. Cheer, joy, goodwill, peace, hope, prosperity, happiness, and harmony. And finally, this is Delilah's card. We'd like to extend a special thanks to all of their teachers. Each of you know how much kindness and creating good people means to us in our district. You may also find additional artwork in the lobby this evening. We've put most in our showcases for you. In closing, because of our sincere commitment to early literacy and our team's devotion to reading, every pre-K through third grader will once again receive a winter book for winter break this year. We encourage all students to take time to read over the break at the end of this month. So until we meet again in the year 2020 for our work around this table, please have a safe, wonderful holiday season and a prosperous new year. And while doing so, let's not forget to take a little time to do something kind for someone else and think of those who are less fortunate in the process. A simple smile, a kind word, or a nice gesture has only ever made the world a better place. So however you and your family choose to celebrate, happy holidays to each of you. This concludes my report, except for one final thing to say. Dr. Houlihan.
Yeah.
While I'm not certain of the traditions
I'm not retiring
this
yet.
board, you're not retiring here. We just moved your seat a little bit.
Yes.
But while I've been here, you've been sitting to my right. And this evening, you've moved to my left. Miss Petaway, will you get something? As we were cleaning up, we found something, not in the archives, but we found something. And we thought we would clean this up for him, not knowing how tonight would turn out, but he has taken a different post. This is something that was created. It was in the newspaper when Dr. Houlihan was superintendent, and it says Granville charts progress for children. Superintendent Tom Houlihan leads Granville County Schools' quest for excellence, and it somewhat mirrors the path we're attempting to still take. So on behalf of this district, we thank you for your service as chair, for as long as you served while I've been here. I really appreciate your support and your leadership, and we present to you Dr. G. Thomas Houlihan. Thank you for your service as chair to the Granville County Board of Education.
Thank you very much.
You're Now this concludes my report.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, board members, do you have reports to make?
Yes, I do. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I attended the North Carolina School Boards Association Annual Conference November 18th through the 20th. and it was informative and interesting. There's too many. They had like 30-some topics, clinic sessions. And of course, I only attended 5 of them because that was all the time I had. But at any rate, I attended several on equity, which is equity in small districts, and sort of learned something about how they started their progress by going to the community and making sure the community was involved in the whole process. I attended one on high performance boards. That was enlightening and interesting, and we're on our way there, I hope. Anyway, that was some of the things that I attended there. One session I attended was from the boardroom to the classroom. It talked about how boards can work with administration to make sure that things that go on in the boardroom really reflects in the classrooms. And the one thing that I thought about when you were talking about the cards, the association do this poster contest for elementary, middle, and high schools. And the school that wins get prizes up to, I think, $5,000 for the first place winner. And I was pretty teased about it because Vance County won a lot of stuff. And I'm thinking that we're going to have to win some stuff next time.
That's right.
So principals and administration, make sure we get all the information we need about the poster contest. And it gives the students an opportunity, and actually the high school do videos, so they get a chance to act, perform, and do their thing. And it's been really interesting to see our children, what they can do. So that's my report, and I would hope that we would participate in those things that the association will do next year.
Thank you for that. Other board members?
No report, but I'd just like to give a shout out to the South Granville Vikings football team for their participation in the state playoffs
Yes.
and having a very successful year.
Yes, sir.
How far did they get?
Third round.
Third round?
Third round.
Out of how many?
I'm not sure.
Don't ask. That's pretty strong. Very good.
Anybody else? I want to tell you about 2 events that I've had the opportunity to be a part of. Earlier, about a month or so ago, I was involved in a meeting with Brenda Dickerson Daniel, who used to serve on this board, but heads our local United Way. Came and met with the superintendent and myself and a few others to talk about really promoting United Way. And so I got a figure just a few moments ago, $11,199.50 that were raised through Granville County Schools. And so I'm very excited about that because some of that money will come right back into our school system through various ways. And so we're very excited to just really push that back to be able to help our community in that way. The second activity was something that was just phenomenal. And Tamara's here, so she may need to correct me a little bit. About 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to participate in a State Employees Credit Union money reality event at JF Webb. And how that worked was they funneled through their JRTC and their elective students, and what they were basically teaching them to do was based on some choices. They didn't get the choice, but randomly they were picked to pick a career, education level, family size. That would in turn tell them what their yearly income was. Through that, they had to figure out how to budget for housing and transportation, entertainment and clothing. Needless to say, designer clothes go out the door real quick when you have to pay for them yourself. But it was very interesting to watch those kids walk through that. What it showed me is, A, that Tamara and her group are doing a great job making sure our kids are getting that financial literacy piece. The second thing is that some of our kids are well on track to be successful adults. Some of them are not, and we need to work on that. But it was a really interesting event that we brought community members in because it was probably, what would you say, 30, 40 volunteers that day. that took that school to do that. But it was really interesting. And so I want to offer to you is our other two high schools, or two of our other high schools will be participating in this in February and March. If your calendar allows, for a half a day or an all day, Tamara can get you that information. But it is a great event, not only to see the financial literacy piece and what SECU is doing for our schools, but also just to see that one-on-one with kids. We got some really interesting conversations. And really learn some things about their personality, but also learn some things about their education. And so I would encourage you, when that information comes out, if you're able to be there, to take part in that. I want to thank you and your team for doing that.
Thank you.
All right. Any other reports? All right. We've reached the policy section of our agenda tonight. Our first part is a memorandum of understanding on the school justice partnership.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been just that, a partnership. There's actually legislation that went into effect today. And districts, along with their partnership with the court system and law enforcement and SROs and communities and our DAs, have all gone into partnership to make certain we're doing right by children. So I'd like to ask our DA if he'd come to the podium. If he'd just like to make any comments, it would be a great time to do so.
Well, thank you for having me. We're obviously very excited. We joined every other state in the nation today in recognizing that 16 and 17-year-olds, for most things, really are better. We're better treated and better suited to advance to the court system as juveniles. There's been quite a bit of research and and y'all are very familiar with the development of young men and young women, and we feel like that with juvenile court we have what I call a treatment paradigm, or we're trying to fix what's going on to cause them to have that situation, and we have understood the collateral consequences and the different issues that 16 and 17-year-olds have with resources about being in adult court. So this is an exciting time for our state. It is a good thing for the school system and the kids that y'all are trying to educate. With respect to the School of Justice Partnership, we've worked very hard over the last 6 months or so, and I was on a team with some other DAs working months before that. The legislation to order us to enter into such an agreement has been in existence for a while, but like a lot of things, not a lot of understanding or thoughts about things, and we feel like we have reached an agreement with this memorandum of understanding that ultimately does what I think it was meant to do, which is to have some deference and discretion to educators and to allow them some freedom. Ultimately, one of the things that I saw when I was a DA was that educators did not have the deference and discretion to handle certain situations, and there were lots of referrals to the juvenile court system that were frankly just sometimes silly. And so what I think that this agreement will allow us to do is to rely on the discretion of educators to make appropriate reports and make some decisions about when it would be appropriate to involve law enforcement or the court system appropriately in reaching a solution for a juvenile offender. But I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss it at length. There's a lot of weeds. So not a lot of it that probably would be interesting to discuss, but happy to talk about anything or answer any questions. Miss Burnett, or Judge Burnett, could not be here tonight. She was in a hearing that she was kind of faced with either going past 5 o'clock and getting it finished or coming back another day, and she told me that she's going to go ahead and knock it out. So.
Appreciate it.
Mr. I don't know if you know this or not, but our DA went to school in Granville County all the way through and went to Chapel Hill, I believe, which is a shame. But anyway.
Imagine what I could have been, right?
And he was a teacher. He taught school, I think, in Chapel Hill, did you not?
I did. I was awarded a teaching fellows scholarship from Granville County Schools to attend UNC Chapel Hill, and from there, student taught in Chapel Hill, and very quickly found a nice place that I fit in, and I loved my principal to death, and decided that I didn't want to venture away from him too far, so I stayed with him 5 years, and I I had decided in the end that I wanted to pursue a career in law, but he told me he was going to retire the next year, so we stuck it out a little longer, and it was a great year, and I've learned a lot about people and about just how dear people's children are to them. You grasp that quickly. I tell my son, you won't know how much I love you until you have one of your own, and that's something you kind of get when you are an educator.
That's right.
A young educator at that. But I've carried that lesson to this day.
Great.
Excellent. This is an action item, board members. We have been asked to agree to this memorandum of understanding formally as a board, but again, it is a partnership. We're not in this alone.
All right, board members, this has been in board docs. Do you have any questions regarding this document? We'll entertain a motion to approve this memorandum of understanding.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, a motion by Mr. Peace and a second by Mr. Udy. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Mr. Waters, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you
very
for
much. I look
being a
forward to
great
signing.
Granville County graduate.
Well, thank you very much. I very much appreciate the time here and how prepared me for going forward.
Thank you, Attorney Waters.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, board.
Our next thing is RTI, personalization work with Granville County Schools.
Absolutely. We're so pleased this evening to have our friends from RTI with us. We've been working in concert with Dr. Angela Quick and Dr. Laura Knapp. They've been so kind to have selected or tapped us to see if we had interest in this work around personalization, and we most certainly did. That is a big buzzword at the state level, personalization. And as we talk about moving our academic needle, this is one of the ways we want to do it. So I, at this time, turn it over to Dr. Quick and Dr. Knapp to help sort of bring you up to speed on this work of personalization. Dr. Quick.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent, you Board Chair. Again, I'm Angela Quick. I'm excited to be here tonight to talk about some free resources that Granville County Schools was selected to receive upon your agreement. And I have with me Dr. Laura Knapp, who is a star researcher at RTI, and this is the example of research and practitioner partnership in kind of its visible form with the two of us here today. Dr. McLean did explain that Granville County was nominated by me based on the work that my team and I had done in Granville County the past year. Luckily, Laura saw that it's a district on the move, and our proposal was approved by the federal government to fund resources here in Granville County and supports for the principals. And I would say that the principals in the schools that we're working with were the primary reason why it was approved. The star power, some of which we saw tonight with the growth and the awards of some of the high school and other principals. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura to kind of talk about quickly what the Regional Education Lab is and the work that we'll be doing, and then we'll answer any last-minute questions.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us here tonight. We really are excited to be here and excited to start this work together. The U.S. Department of Education, over 50 years ago, funded an effort referred to as the Regional Education Laboratories. They divided the United States into 10 regions. North Carolina is part of the Southeast region, along with South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Florida. So the Southeast United States region has a laboratory that is tasked with helping state departments of education and school districts both by doing research to prove successful practices and then coaching district staff, principals, and teachers in how to implement these scientifically proven practices. So once again, that's the research practice partnership that Angela and I have together. We also lead a research alliance within the state of North Carolina, measuring success through competency-based learning. And this takes personalization to the classroom, to the teacher. how do we focus on each student individually to figure out how to help them succeed and progress with their learning. That's the idea behind personalization and competency-based education. This quickly is a definition that we came up with for the state of North Carolina. A personalized learning approach, competency-based education, provides flexible and engaging learning environment in which progression is based on mastery of explicit learning objectives or competencies, and it's demonstrated through evidence of student learning, not based on time spent in a course, on a topic, or sitting in a seat. And this definition aligns nicely with DPI's definition of personalization. So what we're proposing to do, and we have already had this work approved by the U.S. Department of Education, for us to provide services to the district free of charge to you. This is funded by the U.S. Department of Education. And we'll begin work hopefully in February of this year. We'll be working with 6 schools, and as Dr. Quick said, these schools were selected based on the star power of their school leadership. 2 high schools, a middle school, and 3 elementary schools. And we'll be working with them along this schedule. We'll be starting efforts with Hawley Middle School, South Granville High School, and Granville Central High School during the spring and summer months. I'm most excited about July. We're going to have a coaching session with all 6 principals, and happy to invite other principals from across the district, Dr. McLean, that you think would benefit from this coaching session as well. And then in the fall and throughout next spring, we'll be working with 3 elementary schools. This coaching is not something that happens quickly. It's very interactive. It's not a sit and listen to us talk. That's not the way we operate at all. It's interactive sessions, which is why we spread them out over a period of months and not just try to do everything all at once. The benefit is having coaching support with experts, interaction between principals, then you then go back into your school and implement what you've learned. Then we come back together, we review, and we learn more. So that's why the schedule is spread out over that period of time. These are some of the proposed services that we intend to offer. If you have anything you want to add?
No, just one thing I forgot to mention is we are working with only 2 districts in the state of North Carolina, and Granville County is one, and the other is New Hanover. So just wanted you to know that I'm very appreciative that Laura and the Southeast Rail agreed with my nomination of Granville County, and excited that our teams will be here supporting the work that we already know based on being a district on the move, as I heard earlier.
Yes.
So with that, any other questions? Just do you have any questions for us?
I just would like to understand a little bit more when I read this. What I'm hearing about provides a flexible, engaging learning environment in which progression, etc., and the personalized education. From talking to a lot of teachers in our district, it seems like we have been doing that for some time. So what are you doing that's going to make that different and make it work better?
So I'll take a stab at the answer, and then Laura can talk about the national conversation. Each of the schools that we're working with will have a specific plan that is tailored to their school. So personalized learning is a big, broad topic. Yes, I would say that you probably are focusing on that within schools in the district, but principals have identified a plan of action or a topic that they want to dive in deeper to get to a more robust idea of personalization and customized to their school. So South Granville and Mount Energy Elementary School will have a different plan of focus for whatever that personalization is within their school, and what their teachers in professional development and strategic planning, all of that will be based on each individual school.
And these schools have already made an effort to start. They're not starting from a traditional, from zero, from a traditional classroom with desks and rows and every student doing the same thing in each 20-minute increment. They've already started, which is why, as Angela said, each school will have their own plan to how to take them from where they are to make the next step, and then the next step after that. And that we hope then that these 6 schools will serve as examples and inspiration for the rest of the district to continue that push forward.
In the state, actually. We have New Hanover will be doing similar around personalized learning. Their schools will have different plans, and then we hope to peer share between the districts. Any things that would be helpful for Granville that New Hanover's doing, and vice versa. That's the idea of sharing.
One more. The statement here says it's demonstrated through evidence of student learning rather than the time spent in a course or on topic. How is that different than what we're doing now where we test? We have state tests and we have EOCs and EOGs. I mean, that's how you are, right now we are measuring evidence of learning, not just the fact that they're there for a semester. So I'm trying to figure out why this is better and different.
That's an excellent question, and I would say for 2 dimensions to answer that question. First, every student doesn't have to demonstrate their learning in the same way. So now the state tests, we haven't tested that yet. We're still going to have to take EOGs. But in the learning process that gets us to the EOG, might allow students to demonstrate their mastery of the topic in different ways. If we're studying constitutional law, someone who likes to write might want to write you an essay about various aspects of the Constitution. A dramatic student might want to put on a play where they do a soliloquy, where they demonstrate their knowledge of the Constitution. Someone who's an artist might want to paint you a picture and then explain to you how that picture demonstrates their understanding of the Constitution. So the first thing is allowing students to demonstrate their knowledge in a different way. The other thing is to allow students to move at their own progression. So in that, using that same example, if the student that wrote the essay to the teacher's judgment had not fully demonstrated mastery of the standards that they had been tested on, then they go back and try again. You don't make a C on a test and stop. You keep learning and you keep working on the content until you've reached proficiency or mastery.
And so you get to teach the teachers how to do this, because obviously
Absolutely.
a teacher who doesn't really know about drama may have a hard time understanding the soliloquy unless they just recite the facts.
It's truly differentiation and different modalities. So the illustration that Laura mentioned was constitutional law, and for a typical history teacher, they may have different ways of teaching, and they could work with other teachers, the art teacher, or perhaps the music teacher for different ways. So the definition you're reading is the state definition for personalized learning and our network definition of personalized learning. But what personalized learning means to each school may be different with that. And then the part around time spent in a course and a topic, that is getting to when you're completely, fully implemented in competency-based learning, seat time does not matter. So you're basing a student on what they know, and they don't have to wait to the end of the semester to take an EOC or an EOG. That's not what we're talking about with Granville. That's the complete research base for competency-based. So we're talking about the intermediate steps of looking at personalization. Now, the state of North Carolina is talking about looking at new assessments that are not just EOC and EOG, which is authentic student learning, performance-based. And they're also looking at widening a state policy, which means students would not have to sit for an entire semester and could take a test and move on to the next class. That's a state-level policy. We're not talking about that for Granville.
So are we the laboratory to see if this works, or do we know already from RTI that this does work?
We know from nationally that, and Laura can speak to some of the other states that have implemented this work, but nationally we know that it works. And we have pilots in North Carolina as well.
Mr. Mims?
Then based on that, will these be the only schools that might have this opportunity, or will we have to apply to be able to share this type process with other schools?
Well, we're hoping that these schools will share with other schools as we're going along. And as I mentioned, that's one reason we're so excited about the leadership coaching session in July, because that will be open up to more principals. This is what the U.S. Department of Education has agreed to fund for the next, 16 months. But that's not to say that after that we couldn't get additional funding from more schools.
Okay. I won't go there now. A question down the road would be just why these? When we look at the complete inventory of schools that we have, might there not be other schools that might need this equally as much?
So that was in consultation with the leadership team.
Okay.
And I do want to say, back to the question around what actually the work is, this work will be done in alignment to Granville County's strategic plan and the work. So nothing on this document around definition or what rail is, that does not supersede the work of Granville County. So this will be done with Granville County Board Policies, Granville County Strategic Plan, and under the leadership of the Cabinet and Dr. McLean in the central office. So that was how these schools were selected, but hopefully, and I'm sure this will go well, we can certainly petition to add another cohort. But we're also a very small team. And so there's no way we're already having to stagger this number of schools to get the level of service that we're talking about, because we're a small team of basically 8 or 9 staff that will be in schools working.
And Dr. Quick, let me sort of address a little bit, Mr. Mims. I think it would be helpful for everyone to know that these schools, this list does not include the schools for Restart. We are considering Restart a very different set of work, and then these schools for the RTI personalization work.
Half of our schools at that point.
Absolutely. So we have some schools doing Restart work. We have these schools working on the personalization work. And then, as you heard, we could possibly add more at a later date.
And Restart is another topic under my domain of expertise within my center that in the future we could think about serving and helping with as well. So,
thank you.
Dr.
Two quick questions. First, how does this plan align with the school improvement plans that everybody's had to submit? You know, one of our concerns has been we have so many different plans going on and they're not necessarily connected. So how is this connected to that?
great question. So in our first meeting with the principals, that was one of the topics that was discussed in the room, is about their individual strategic plans for the school, and this is what they're focusing on. So we wanted to make sure that this work helped them achieve their school improvement plan. And then we also aligned before we submitted to the federal, Laura submitted to the federal powers that be, we aligned the work with the Granville County strategic plan and went back and looked at the tenets of that my team helped with. So we were familiar with it to make sure it aligned. So we can draw a clear alignment to the district strategic plan and the school improvement plans. But the principals ultimately have the decision-making authority to edit and move things around if need be.
Good. Second question, you talk about coaching. Are we talking about coaching a principal in terms of their leadership and the issues they face, or are we talking about coaching them related to personalized? How does that work?
Second great question. Lots of great questions. It is not coaching the individual principal on their leadership skill, knowledge, and dispositions. It is about leading a school with this content area domain. So the term coaching is not the typical instructional coaching that we're talking about. However, in the schools that are doing project-based learning, there may be some professional development and content development on my team side that would be more aligned in that area. We'll have to see how that shakes out. Is that how you would describe it?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, board members?
So another opportunity. So at this point, if you combine these 6 schools with our Restart schools, we are touching 10 schools this year in an attempt to move the academic needle based on what the schools would like to see happen. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you. All right. So now we're moving to our December performance update.
Very nice. Dr. Myrick, will you and your team please take the podium?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, board members. Tonight we're going to focus on CTE, work keys, ACT, and summer second testing program. I'm going to just start off by quickly reminding you of in our high schools, there are really 5 areas that make up a high school letter grade, and Beth showed this a little earlier in the school year, but I just wanted to bring this back to your attention, just reminding you of what those 5 areas are. The end of grade, the end of course, the graduation rate, the number of students successfully completing Math 3, the ACT, and the work keys, ACT work keys. At this time, I'm going to turn the podium over to Ms. Tamara Rodenbach, who is our career development coordinator, and she works very closely with our students who take the work keys assessment.
Thank you, Dr. Mark. Yes, I'm very excited to talk for a moment about our work keys, or what we call our National Career Readiness Certificate. This is a test that our students who are seniors who have qualified to take it. They qualify by completing at least 4 CTE classes or more, and one of those has to be a second level course. So once the students qualify to take work keys or the National Career Readiness Certificate, this is something that they can put on their resumes, their applications, and when they go into interview for jobs, they can let the potential employer know that they have earned a certificate. And this is career readiness. This means that they have shown or demonstrated proficiency in reading, math, and graphic literacy. Also, the students are actually going to be testing early this year. This is the first year that we have students testing tomorrow. So I hope you sleep very good tonight thinking about those students. But many of our principals and CTE teachers and myself have helped the students prepare for this test. Those that are qualified will test tomorrow, and then we will have a second test date in March for students who are taking that second level course next semester. The students actually also will have a celebration. In May, we will get to celebrate those students who earned a silver certificate or higher. So they start in with bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And we're very excited because we've had great success with these students, and we want to celebrate that. So in May, on May 21st, we invite you to support that event. I will be sending out an invitation. And we'd also like for you to consider a way that you can support by donating a gift or some type of reward for our students, because we do have drawings to also celebrate their success. So this Career Readiness Certificate is something that our students, whether they are going to a 4-year school, 2-year school, military, trade certification program, every one of them, including ourselves, our goal is to work and become employable, and this is a test that will help them be able to sell themselves for full-time and part-time employment. So thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Each year, the state of North Carolina provides every 11th grader with the opportunity to take their college entrance exam, ACT. In order to help students be better prepared, this year, Granville County Public Schools has provided students with an online preparation tool that they can use both at school and at home, as you saw earlier from the young lady who has mastered all of the words in that program. We also are very excited that this year we provided students and offered all 11th grade students an opportunity to sit down and take a full-length practice ACT exam so that they can see what all of those sections are about, how many sections are on each, how many questions are on each section, and we encourage them to remember you need to answer every question, and so that hopefully on February 25th they will remember that. That practice exam provided students an opportunity to have an individual student report to show their projected composite score and scores in each one of their subject area with an explanation on the back. So I have a copy for you so you can look at that. And all of our schools are using those individual reports and then each subject area report to focus that remediation for students before that February 25th test. Just a real quick update on those numbers. I did this on November 20th,
So about 10 days ago, our students had answered 50,465 ACT questions and mastered 7,824 words. As of today, they have answered 66,541 questions and mastered 10,754 words. So our students are really working hard to be prepared for the ACT.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question, Ms. Sullivan. You said, maybe I heard you wrong, you said this is the first year we're doing method test prep. We've been using that for years.
We have not been consistently across the district using it.
Oh, okay, because we were using it in Health and Life
Yes,
Science,
we
I
were.
know, for
That's right.
5 or 6 years.
Bit of a mandate this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we're going to switch gears just a little bit to our summer plans, and Beth is going to come up and talk about what we're going to do and what we hope we can do.
Well, historically, we have been given the opportunity by the state to give the EOG and the EOC a second time to any student that's not proficient. It's wonderful that DPI allows us to do that. It just doesn't happen within the academic school year. It has to happen once the school year ends. And historically, we needed to do it during the required teacher work days when teachers were here. And if we had buses parked and we saved some gas, then it didn't cost us on those required days, and it was financially frugal to be able to put on a summer second testing opportunity for students. Well, last year with the math scores being delayed, we retested the reading and the science. And every time students have the opportunity for a second test, their scores go up. Whether they become proficient or not, that scale score increases, period. So if you're not making that scale score increase, you're never going to be proficient. But our score goes up every time there's a second test. So historically, we've been using the last 4 days once school's out for 2 days of remediation and about 2 days to test. Well, here's our wish list. Next. We would love to have some type of really cool, awesome, fun, hands-on opportunity for kids so that they don't feel like it's some punishment for not passing a test. And wouldn't it be great if every student had the opportunity to come, whether they were proficient or not, but especially make sure the children that weren't proficient on the test got in there, because they definitely need a couple of weeks, looking at 3, one small week, Tuesday to Thursday, and then the other 2 Monday through Thursdays, so that we'd have some real academic push and then some hands-on fun stuff for them to catch up on the curriculum standards that they're missing, so that then they would take the test. See, the absolute deadline to upload test scores isn't until July the 6th. But we've historically done this summer second testing right after school's out. But if you take the walls down and you take away limits and look at what we could do if we had more time and some funding or some support from wherever we can find it, then we wouldn't test until the end of June. And think about how many students would then pass the math and the science test. Because they're doing the same thing with reading this year that they did last year. They're delaying the reading scores. So we'll get those in August like we did the math this past time. But we could really do some great stuff with math and science this summer. Doesn't that sound like fun?
Good job, Beth.
Of course, extending our summer school opportunities comes with a cost. And so I talked to Ms. Dave and Mr. Wilkins, and the cost that we have come up with, and this is an estimated cost on the high end, it will cost about this much money in order to make that happen. But like I said, this is a high-end cost. And because we don't know how many of our students will have to retest, we don't really know how many buses we will have to run and how many teachers it will take. So they estimated on the high end about $194,481 for that. We are hopeful that this is something that can be found in the budget so that we can provide our students with this great opportunity.
All right, 4 members. I feel like there's a question coming, so.
Mr. Chair, the 194 is tough. I mean, that's I figure that's maybe 3 curriculum coaches we could hire or something. So if I understand this, what we're trying to do is just improve our test scores. So we're teaching to the test, if I understand this, and not teaching to educate. So this is strictly to improve test scores, correct? So the whole effort will be, or am I wrong?
I'm saying no.
Okay.
Because
I'd
to
like to
improve
hear.
test scores was that itty bitty little do what we can do just because it's required test, teacher required. This is to expand and have fun and do the math and the science camp, hands-on activity. It wouldn't just be the kids that didn't pass the test, but we want to make sure that they get the opportunity to go because then they'd be excited about it a little more maybe. So yeah, it'd be great to improve test scores, but it's not all about that.
Okay, good. I'm glad you said that. Thank you.
That's not.
And if you would think in terms of where Ms. Robinson is going to come up next and talk about with our summer reading program, excuse me. So for students in first and second grade, it does just what Beth talks about. It's making the reading fun for the students. So that's what we hope to gain by expanding them to the summer opportunities.
So this cost would include the first and second graders?
No, sir. It's a different.
That's only, which students would that include?
That would include our middle school and high school and elementary school students. Fourth math through 8.
Yeah, 4 through 8 math.
And then
5 and 8 science.
5 and 8 science, yes.
5 and 8 science. That's where the tests are, but other grade levels, depending on the hands-on strategy, standards that we would cover.
So we saw Math 3 earlier as one of the school letter grades for high schools.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not doing this for high school students?
Yes, that's available.
High school's in there.
If I don't have a high school up there, then forgive me. Everybody gets the opportunity to take the second test, EOC as well as EOG.
For that figure?
It's very difficult to get a high school kid to come back and take the test again because once they get credit for the course, then they're feeling pretty done. And we can't give them a higher grade when they come back and take the test again. There's no skin in the game for them other than their love for us. And that does go a long way sometimes, right there in the spring. We get a handful of kids everywhere to come back and really knock it out and become proficient because they want their transcript going to college to have a proficient score on it. That's really the only prize high school kids get for coming back and taking it again. We can't give them a higher grade, which we'd love to, but that's a DPI rule.
Thank you.
Dr. Houlihan? Just to be clear, when any student takes the test the second time, if the scores, wherever the scores are, if they improve, does that count for our overall?
Yeah. Proficiency, not growth, just proficiency.
Okay.
Before the test, we might have 52% proficiency. After the test, we might get bumped up to 62 or 68. It doesn't help growth, though. Those scale scores going up is great, and we celebrate it, but that's not going to help our EBOS score. That first test score is for growth in EBOS.
Do you have any idea, percentage-wise, the percent of students who would be in these programs who very well could be realistically go towards to reach proficiency?
20 to 30% easy, just done with
Really?
them coming. I mean, I can tell you that our scores go up that much just with their participation in the short term. So I know it would go higher than that if they had more time and more hands-on,
I have to ask a question then. Why?
mean,
Why
why?
can't we do that for the first time they take the test? Why just taking it a second time does it go up so much?
I would say that in the end of May and June, I don't think teachers are going on field trips and having a woohoo good time. They're pushing every standard right there at the last minute.
Right, so
Getting it in there till the test.
if you take it a second time, why do you see such dramatic improvement?
I think some of it can come from the fact of test anxiety when children have to take
See
a
it the
test.
second time.
Because the test is given at that one point, at one moment in time. It's just like when students take the ACT and the SAT, they may not score the score that they want the first time that they take it, but the more they take it, the more familiar they become with the types of questions and the way that the test is laid out kind of calms that anxiety a little bit. So I believe that some portion of it, and there's research to talk about how students perform better on a test in some cases when they take it a second time. And it's not the same test. They get a different version of that test when they retest, but just kind of kill those anxieties that they might have.
Other questions? I've got two for this before we move on. What would be the drop dead date that we would need to make a decision to be able to do this?
My plan is due our plan is due April 1st to DPI. It has to pass us first before it goes to them on April 1st, and then they have the opportunity to accept it or reject it.
Okay. Then my second question is, Beth, we don't have a budget yet. Maybe we'll have one by the summer. Is there any idea of where we may be able to find this at this point, or is it too early to say?
I think it's too early to say. I mean, without a budget, you know.
Well, like I said, we may have one by summertime.
Right, that's right.
And I will say that she told me that when I asked her. I just kept begging, just some rough numbers, please. So.
Okay, all right.
So,
I'm sorry. Mr. Udy?
I don't really have a question, but I would like to know if there's anything in place to prepare the parents, because a lot of the parents are under the idea of, well, my child's passed, it's summertime, I'm not sending them back for retesting. So, and this is just an idea, is if you could come up with something to help prepare the parents to send the children back.
Third 9 weeks, conversations begin at right around that third 9 weeks, parent conference time, about how they're doing in the class and the fact that the EOG is coming, and that if they don't pass it, it's not the end of the world. We're going to have a second opportunity. We really like you to do your level best the first time. And then a letter goes home, and there's communication, but we could always do a better job. They need to see the opportunities later ahead of time.
Very good.
Any other questions?
So adding on to that piece, you'll notice that work was around math and science, because the reading test is in a standard setting year, so there is no second test for reading. However, assuming all works well from Read to Achieve, our first through third grade students will continue to have an opportunity for reading camp in the summer as well. That is, we have been given eligibility requirements based on the new iStation assessment. So we will know sort of what constitutes eligibility, knowing that reading camp is an option for our first through third graders. It is not a requirement, but it is encouraged. And in reading camp, it is what we said. We really work on building better readers. We work on those reading behaviors and those reading skills. How do we continue to help those students to grow and improve? It is tentatively scheduled for June, July. Once we get all of this settled out and all the plans, specific plans made for the summer, then we'll settle that in.
So our next slide, we're coming to the end, is on student engagement. And a couple of months ago, I talked about our core instructional model, where student engagement is a part of that. And we were talking about what can we do as a district to really bring that focus in. So this past summer, I sent about 5 of our district leaders to Florida for the week, and they spent time with Kagan. And they came, well, while they were there, they were texting me, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this, but we can't do it alone. And so because we sent that group of leaders to Kagan this summer, we had a trainer that was able to come to us free of charge and give out all of our principals and some of our teacher leaders in the district and assistant principals an opportunity to sit down and learn what it really means to be engaged. And this is a quick video. We'll just kind of start off. We'll show you about a minute of that video, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about a few more things that go along with that, some principal testimonials.
Kagan, it's all about engagement. Traditional teaching engages some students, but not all. Kagan is a revolutionary approach to teaching that actively engages every student. Let's look at the problems traditional teaching creates. Students sit in rows. The rule is no talking. The teacher presents new information or a new skill. To engage students, the teacher asks the class a question. One student responds at a time. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? So what's wrong with that? The first problem is we set our students against each other. When the teacher calls on Peter to answer, Susie lowers her hand in disappointment. Ah! But when Peter begins to falter, she shoots her hand back up, waves it wildly. Pick me, teacher. A subset of students compete for the opportunity to shine. A competitive class is not a brain-friendly learning environment. The next problem is students spend very little time actively engaged. The teacher is doing most of the talking most of the time. When we finally do engage students, it's one at a time. It's like being in a long line waiting to be served. A big percent of the class is somewhere between mildly interested and comatose. Many students don't want to turn. They feel they can't or don't want to compete. Johnny is shy. Monica is lower achieving. Juan is still learning English. These students don't want to be singled out. Don't call on me. They hide. They opt out. It's no wonder we have an achievement gap. Traditional teaching engages some of the class, but many students can easily slip through the cracks. Kagan engages all students. We turn things around, literally. Instead of facing the back of a classmate's head, we turn students around to face each other. Instead of calling on one student at a time, we can call on all students. Using a Kagan structure timed pair share, the teacher asks a question. In pairs, partner A shares for 30 seconds. Then partner B shares for 30 seconds. Everyone has a turn. Sharing with a partner is safe. There's no need to hide. In just a little over a minute, we engage every student. In the same amount of time in the traditional class, we engage one student. What's better, engage one student or engage every student? Absolutely right. Everyone learns more. It's not just the amount of engagement that matters. It also matters how we engage students. With Kagan structures, we engage students with interactive pair and team structures. While students master academic curriculum, they develop essential social skills. They learn teamwork skills. They develop communication skills. They practice leadership skills. These are the very college and career readiness skills our standards call for. In teams, students are no longer isolated or competing against each other. They celebrate each other's successes. They are on the same side. Cooperation leads to kinder and more caring kids. We create buddies, not bullies. Kagan's simple yet powerful structures transform education. In numbered heads together, teammates put their heads together to review. Everyone is more active and the content becomes more memorable. In quiz trade, students repeatedly quiz classmates. They have so much more fun being up and active than working alone. In rally
So you can have an opportunity to watch the rest of the video in Board Docs. Just click on the link. And here's some testimonials from our principals that attended the session.
So, like Dr. Mark said, several of us had the chance to go this summer, and we were absolutely texting him saying, oh my goodness, this is so powerful. The value of it and the impact of it is pretty incredible, and you can just see from that brief example. Also, I think in your handouts tonight you have a flyer that describes some of the data that Kagan makes available for the impact of their work. This is an organization that's been around for a long, long time, done some really incredible work. As a result of the connections we made in Florida, we were able to have this event back in November, because if we want to even entertain the idea of doing this work, we need buy-in and we need to have everybody on board. So we had an opportunity to bring in Dr. Vern Miner, who is one of the trainers for Kagan. He is a former superintendent from Texas, and he has led 2 districts in bringing engagement work to those districts through Kagan. So we had a chance to spend the day with him. Our principals had a chance to spend the day with him. The feedback was very powerful. 96% of our principals believed that implementation of Kagan would increase teaching and learning in their schools as a result of just spending a few hours with Dr. Miner. 96% of them believe that we should bring this work to Granville County Public Schools. We got comments like being intentional about how we teach students to engage and collaborate. So it is about the content, and it is about increasing content knowledge and increasing performance, but it is all those other 21st century skills that the video talked about. It's teaching them to collaborate, teaching them to cooperate, teaching them to positively interact with each other. Another participant talked about having collaborative structures in place that guide student-to-student interactions in the classroom and the impact of that on social skills, requiring everybody to participate, that call on all versus call on one piece. So there's a lot of buy-in from our principals and from some of our teacher leaders in the district around this work. We wanted to make you aware of it and give you some insight into it as well. And we have an opportunity, if you want to, we are now working with Dr. Miner to put together a plan of if we were to bring this to Granville County Schools, what does that look like and what would it cost? I spoke with him this morning. We will have that put together in the next couple of weeks. And he is available to share with you all in January if that's something you'd like to do. He could do something virtually.
What questions do you have?
I'm glad they gave you the nice version tonight. They are beating my door down to have cake in the district.
Is this something we do district-wide, or we do pilot schools, or how would you?
I'll tell you, Mr. Rivers, my initial thought, Kagan's been around for a while. I was introduced, it has to be over 10 years ago. And it is an incredible methodology to engaging students, research-based, and it is an answer for students not having permission to hide. And when we talk about increasing achievement, the one group we've left out of that conversation is the children. How can we help them own their work and engagement in schools? So when this team went off, I was pleased that Dr. Myrick sent them, number one, to such an incredible research-based piece of work, but I was pleased with their excitement when they came back. What I did not anticipate was their reaction being so strong. I really didn't anticipate every principal in this district looking at me and begging me and asking me, so when can we get it? Because we still don't have a budget. So I can't bring it to you tonight, but I know when we visited schools on our instructional walk, the one thing Mr. Richardson and Mr. Peace got, and I was glad they got it, is what I've been getting, which was, we like Kagan. And when can we get it? And I don't know if either of you want to say anything, but it is an incredible way to remove opinion from what ought to be occurring in the classroom. And if it was the norm through the lens of children, picture this. If a kindergartner learned their job in kindergarten, imagine what they'd still be doing in 5th and 6th grade, because it's just what we do around here. And it's what's expected of me as the learner in the school system. And then imagine what they'd be doing as a 9th grader and a 10th grader and an 11th grader and a 12th grader, because it's what's expected of me as a learner in the district. And it wouldn't matter that I was in Mr. Richardson's room or Miss Dugerson's room or Miss McLean's room or Miss Pettaway's room. I wouldn't have to learn new strategies for being an exceptional student each year. I would know my job throughout my years in the district. So it is an incredible piece, and I'm pleased, but I think for us, we have to wait to see the budget. But I've asked them in the meantime to continue getting work, continue exposing people to the work, and let's see what we can use. Some schools have begun using pieces in their building, and that's been nice because I think we need feedback on those pieces. But we've not gone full scale with anything because, quite frankly, I think we're going to have to pay for that. But they are tinkering with it and they're playing with it to see if it's something that would fit in well in our culture.
This seems very similar to Henderson Collegiate's approach. It's very much.
There are tenants, absolutely.
Yeah,
You're
tenants
right.
that engage
You're
children.
right.
Do we have any idea what it would cost district-wide? I mean, we talking
I really don't.
100,000 or 20 million?
I really don't. And what concerns me is they would not have the conversation, just a sit-down conversation. So that tells me something.
What does it tell you?
It's probably expensive, but it's the question I have is it worth it? And would it be worth sunsetting some things to focus on this?
Yeah, that's good.
That's the point, So I think it's worth us continuing to investigate. I thought it would be worth us putting it out for our board to see what we are looking at, so that you can do some research as well, and let's all just take a look. Let's take a look.
Is it copyrighted? Could we?
It's definitely copyrighted. But I like your style, Mr. Rivers.
Any other board members? When we were doing our walkthroughs, this was something we heard from each of the three principals, and they were very excited about it. And I told Dr. McLean a second ago it was not intentional, but this type of learning was what we did in SIP this year. It wasn't the stand up and listen to somebody lecture, it was the communicate back and forth. Again, it wasn't intentional, but it kind of worked out that way. So.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
All right. Next, we're moving to a facilities update, and I think this is the attorney.
That's right. Board members, I have an update for you and an action item on the Creedmoor Annex. We've received multiple offers for both properties that you have for sale, and I will start with the Crescent Drive property. We actually received a fourth offer on that property on Wednesday. So that's being re-advertised. So the most recent offer was $72,700, which is certainly well above the $58,000 that was the first offer and that you initially paid for it. So, and it appears that the offerers are in general investors, people who either rent out or flip, smaller properties. So, so that one is still being advertised. There are at least this week left where someone could raise that offer. The Creedmoor Annex, as I think you know, the first offer was $245,000, and then the city of Creedmoor actually came in with an upset bid of $270,000. That was re-advertised, and there were no additional offers. So that is your high offer. And what I have before you tonight is a proposed resolution of the Board of Education accepting that offer and authorizing the superintendent and chair to execute the paperwork necessary to sell the property in as-is condition to the city. And they have been through it with, Stan, help me out, like with some engineers, they've seen the property, they've looked at it closely before they made their offer.
What questions do you have for the attorney?
And in case it comes up, these funds would go back into your capital outlay funds and be available for other capital improvements.
You've been presented with a resolution. We'll entertain a motion if you would like to accept this and accept that offer and move forward with the sale of the property.
I'd like to entertain that motion to accept the resolution to sell it to the city of Creedmoor.
I'll second. All right. We have a motion and a second. Are there any other discussion? All right, seeing none. If you're ready to vote, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right.
Now, that was my first and second grade class building, so y'all take care of it. Still standing.
No, that is it for the facilities.
Okay. All right, so now we're... Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, board members. Dr. McLean asked that I also just give you a brief update about the roofing projects. The first is we had a bid opening meeting on Wednesday before Thanksgiving for the major replacement at J.F. Webb High School. And unfortunately, we only received 2 sealed bids at that meeting. There was a problem with the FedEx delivery of at least one contractor. And so we have had to put that back out, re-advertise that bid process, and we will open up the next sealed bids on December the 11th, I believe. That's Wednesday. So the statute requires that we wait at least 7 days, re-advertise, and then when the bids come back, we no longer have to have a minimum of 3. So, but we feel like it was just simply a courier problem that occurred right before Thanksgiving because we were getting phone calls frantically from a couple of contractors, worried that we had not received their bids yet. So I feel confident about that. Also, I want to let you know that work continues to proceed well at Granville Central High School. I think I've told most of you there's some samples of the roofing, the new roofing material. The large piece is the single new ply that's going on top, and the little small piece is actually the fiberglass. It's 2 plies. It's kind of smushed together over time. It's much more brittle, and you can agency, not as flexible. So anyway, that's going well. I emailed you some reports. I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but everything's going according to schedule.
Any questions for Dr. Wimble? That's good. Thank you. I see the mayor's still here. If you want to save a stamp, you can write Beth a check right now. There you go.
I'd like to, but I don't have a check.
Okay. We'll wait for it.
Thank y'all very much. We look forward to putting that building into really good use.
Thank you.
All right, Madam Superintendent, we have a policy first read.
We do. We have a first read this evening. Dr. Winborn, our drug and alcohol testing of commercial motor vehicles operators.
Yes, thank you, Dr. McLean. This is a policy draft from the North Carolina School Boards Association, and it is required. This reflects changes to the new federal regulations related to commercial driver's license drug and alcohol clearinghouse. And Ms. Dewson, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically moving forward, not only will we be required to check, when we hire new applicants, screen them for drugs and alcohol, we will also need to periodically check a clearinghouse to see if there have been any violations for our drivers as well. So it adds another layer of sort of making sure that all of our CDL bus drivers, in effect, are operating cleanly.
Mm-hmm. It's like a criminal records check, but for driving records.
One thing that did stand out to me is if you look at the second page, there's a footnote, and this brought up sort of an item about CBD, cannabinoid oil, which I believe is hemp oil extract, and how it's possible this could cause some people to test positive. So I don't know, that might be an interesting gray area in the future. Just reading that footnote.
Dr. Winborn, are there things in the policy that talks about that this has to periodically be done, or is it just it's not a one-time deal, is it?
Well, so with regard to testing, drug and alcohol testing, that's done at the hiring process, and then there's a lottery. We have an outside company through the DOT that sends us a list every so often. So Harry will get this list. We summon the drivers within a certain amount of time to come and provide a sample, or they'll go to a facility and do it, and that gets sent off to, we're using Granville Health Systems now to do that screening. So, but the clearinghouse is for any other types of, as Eva said, criminal violations that they may have. Is it just related to their driving record?
Well, my understanding is that it is a clearinghouse of if they've had a prior violation of the requirements of their CDL.
Gotcha.
So essentially, have they had a drug or alcohol violation for another employer?
Or maybe a moving violation, serious driving infraction.
I don't know, honestly. Yeah, but it's a new federal requirement. CDLs are federally regulated. So.
Mr. Rivers, you have a question?
Yes, sir. On the first page, prohibited acts, it states you may not perform safety-sensitive functions within 4 hours after using alcohol. In the aviation field, it's 10 hours, follow the throttle is the term. 4 hours just seems like that's just ridiculous. I mean, we got to at least do 8 hours. I mean, what the heck is NCSBA thinking about? That's ludicrous. So I would say I can't support that based on that. You can't have somebody drinking and then 4 hours later driving a bus. So how do we fix that?
And so that's actually from the federal regulations, which isn't to say that you couldn't increase it, although I don't know exactly how you would detect a
Well,
violation.
14 CFR Part 91 is 10 hours. That's the FAA requirements to fly an airplane.
And I would like to know how do they arrive at 4 hours? Because I'm familiar with Ms. Rivers saying.
Again, that comes from the federal regulations governing commercial driver's licenses, and it just says no driver shall perform safety-sensitive functions within 4 hours after using alcohol. And that's 49 CFR 382. So that is why it's in the policy. I would be happy to look into whether you can increase that by local policy.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chair, it just seems odd if we're saying within 4 hours, so we're saying if someone is detected or at breakfast or in the morning, they can come back and work that afternoon. That just doesn't seem like it makes sense. We need to have more stringent regulations. This is safety, and if safety is a top priority, let's act like it and make sure it's a minimum of 8 hours or one whole complete shift.
Yeah, so, and I think that can be done. I do want to note that you can't, it's 4 hours, but also you can't test positive for alcohol regardless of when you drink it. So what this is if someone saw you at the bar last night, you see what I'm saying, and then you drove within 4 hours, but it's in addition to you have to have a clean blood test. But again, I'm happy to research that.
Would you explain that a little bit? I'm not clear at all on what you're
So
saying.
the policy says you cannot operate any school bus while alcohol remains in your body.
Right.
You also can't operate a vehicle 4 hours after using alcohol, even if it doesn't remain in your body. See what I'm saying? Like, let's say you had a beer and 4 hours later it's undetectable on a test. If you drove within that 4 hours, you would still be in violation, even though it's undetectable on a test. So it's if someone saw you consume alcohol.
Yeah, there are airline pilots in prison today who violated the 10 hours, who had alcohol 7-8 hours prior to reporting for their flight early in the morning. If you get commode hugging drunk, 4 hours later, you're still going to be, under the influence. So, I can't see how we could, in good conscience, not that we have any drivers who are habitual alcohol abusers, but right here, we just got to. That's just as I don't know. That goes against every sense I have about safety and.
So it sounds like there's a little bit of research needs to be done. Can you tell us? This is a first read. What would we go through the process if someone wanted to make this change?
Well, we could bring it back at the next board meeting, and the board could decide if that's a first or second read.
Okay.
Should we get a sense of the board about whether, if it's just Mr. Mims and I who think the 4 hours is too short? I
agree completely.
I agree.
Okay. So it looks like we have a sense of the board that this is unacceptable.
So, I'll bring back a draft. Can you give me a sense of what, I know you said 10 hours for aviation. I think so. I just want to make clear, so if someone has one beer at 10 p.m., they cannot drive their bus the next morning? Or is that?
Well, if that's what we write into it, then
right.
yes.
Is that what you are desiring to write into it?
I would say a minimum of 8 hours. I prefer 10 because that's the standard for flying airplanes. And clearly, driving a bus on one of Granville County roads in the wintertime certainly is every bit as challenging and dangerous. So, but that's my personal. I think that absolute minimum should be 8 hours. And you're absolutely right. If you had a beer at 1 o'clock in the morning, you would not be able to report for work that next day. But if you're having a beer at 1 o'clock in the morning, you probably shouldn't be reporting for work.
Oh, I agree. But I just understand that some of our bus drivers report for work at 5:30. So it would, count backwards from that.
Right. They need to be careful.
If there was a wreck and I was a parent and my child was hurt and the person had been drinking and we had a policy of only 4 hours or whatever, I can tell you right now, you'd be in trouble.
Yep.
But plus, it's just common sense.
It's common sense, and it's not the right thing to do to our children.
It's just common sense.
8 hours is typically what you think of as a restful sleep. 8 hours should be satisfactory, in my opinion.
Could we say 8 hours now, and you wouldn't have to go to all the trouble and billable hours to change it? We just change it to 8?
Well, all I want to look into is there any legal reason that you can't? Because what the School Board Association has done is recite the federal regulations, and I've never been asked whether you can change that requirement, and I just don't know. But I just want to make sure that there's not some reason why you can't have a higher requirement.
I mean, this is advisory, right? This is NCSBA suggesting a policy. We can certainly make it more stringent.
Well, sure, but what I'm saying is the federal regulations say 4 hours. I just want to make sure that there's not something in the federal regulations that requires that your policies say 4 hours, because I've never looked at that.
Okay.
But I don't intend to, spend a lot of time on it.
I think 8 hours is enough, because under the pharmacology of alcohol, you lose 1 point an hour. So if someone blew an 8 hours later they blow a 0, but the policy goes ahead and says you can't drink anything than that 8 hours too. Because if they do, then it's going to take it up higher and take longer for you to come down. The only thing I see is just going to be hard to prove.
And certainly, again, if you have alcohol in your blood and you're tested, you're in violation, no matter how little it is.
That's right. But I just don't see how this is going to be easy to prove. Just if someone comes up and says, well, I saw him drinking last night, there's a lot of things you're going to have to look at. Are they doing this as vengeance? Or, maybe they didn't. So I feel like we should have some kind of guidelines that we follow to make sure what they're saying is accurate before we were to act on that policy. But I think 8 hours is enough.
Ms. Stevenson, when I received this policy, there was an accompanying memo from School Boards Association, and I believe it spoke to a January 6th deadline.
That is the deadline for participating in the clearinghouse,
Okay.
which I don't see any reason you can't do whether or not it's in policy.
I just didn't know if that was relevant.
So I think it's fine if your policy is, a little bit after that.
All right, so this is the first read, and it sounds like we have a consensus to ask the attorney to come back with a stronger time frame in that policy at our next board meeting. Our next thing is in the area of finance. And this comes from Dr. Winborn about unpaid lunch charges.
Yes. Ms. Patricia Crute is ill this evening, so Dr. Winborn is going to fully share with you 2 pieces of information. You asked for a mid-year report at the end of last year, so we're honoring that request this evening. Dr. Winborn?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Crute does send her regrets. Wishes she was here to share and answer questions, but I did meet with her and got some other background information. Hopefully I can answer questions that you have. So what we've tried to do here is provide a breakdown for each of the schools for the entire academic year last year, 18-19. And if you'll scroll down just a hair more, you can see the total. I'm sorry, it was in there. It was fine. But you can see the total amount of outstanding charges for the district last year, the end of the year, was $809. And that was after the donations kicked in against that $1,691. One of the things that I found interesting as I talked more about this with Ms. Crute was that many of the donations are school specific.
Right.
So they're not, very seldom does she get one for the whole, like here, put this towards the district's balance. They're usually people that are giving this money want it for a specific school for a variety of reasons. We have many anonymous donors, but we also have some companies that have chipped in and helped as well. I think one that's not listed up there, a built-in part of the was a Subway in Creedmoor as well.
Yes.
So not all of the donors are listed, but the total amount is accurate. Then if you shift to the far right column, this is as of the 18th of November, our charges were $4,233. And you may be thinking, oh my God, what's going on? It's 4 times what it was for the entire year. Well, Patricia says that this is actually typical, that
Yes.
what we see in the fall is this amount tends to climb and climb. And the Child Nutrition Department in late October started sending out letters to families who were over $100 in arrears. And then they'll start making phone calls as well. She also notes that typically in the early part of the new year, right after tax season, these balances will get paid back down by many of the families, especially when they get their tax refunds, that they will whittle these back down. So they see that typically is something that happens. If you just take, for example, one school, Northern Granville Middle School, they're over $700 a couple weeks ago, and that may sound like a lot, but they almost have 700 children there. And I think about I have 2 kids at Northern Granville, and I realized 2 weeks ago that I was behind, and my kids owed $40 for the 2 of them. So if you just had 15 parents like me at that school that were behind a little bit, you could rack up $700. So, I mean, a lot of times it's small balances that individual families are carrying.
That's right.
But taken together, it can add up.
Another story, Dr. Winborn, is you'll see peaks and valleys with balances all over the district depending on time of year. We're approaching the holiday season. So that 4,000 will probably take a bit of a spike because decisions have to be made about Christmas or a heating bill over lunch money. And so we want to be very mindful of that. So I think it was very powerful for her to share. If we'd stuck with just end of year, that would have painted one picture. But this time of year paints another picture. We've had some cold nights, and sometimes families have to make some decisions. We're going to face cold nights and Christmas, and we're out of school when lunch won't be served for 2 weeks at the end of this month. And I guarantee what January will look like. So we want to be very mindful of this. But I have a highlight to share. As I was walking in one of our schools just last week before we went on vacation, it was really neat. An officer who is not an SRO was walking into one of the schools right behind me. And the secretary said, "May I help you?" And he said, yes. She said, may I get your name? Who are you here to see? He said, don't worry about it. And he handed her some money and said, this is just to go on a few of the accounts in the cafeteria. He didn't leave his name. He wasn't the SRO, but one of our officers in the community just wanted to donate some money to pay on the cafeteria bill that he knew. And I could tell he had done that before. He knew the routine. It wasn't about his name or anything, but it was about putting on the bill. So I think she's right. It's school specific. People in the community walk in to do that. So that was one of the highlights for me about our community. So I thought this was good information, and we can bring it back again at another point, but I thought it was very nice you asked for this.
Just wanted to point out we also included total counts so you could get some context about how many we're talking. We served almost 1 million meals last academic year. And just so in case you didn't know, the cost for elementary students, the full price for breakfast is $1, and the full price for lunch is $2.50. For middle and high schools, breakfast is $1.25, and lunch is $2.75. If you're on the reduced lunch plan, breakfast is regular price, but lunch only costs 40 cents. And if you're on the free, if you're deemed free, then breakfast and lunch are free. So, and I know this is something that's, been talked about with our board members, and I don't know, Mr. Richardson, if you wanted to share about the upcoming conference.
I was sharing with board member Allred. So last year I had the opportunity to go to the NC Fights Hunger Conference with Dr. Winborn and Ms. Crude. And what they highlighted were the innovative things being done across the state around breakfast and lunch, and how we could get kids knowing that our kids come with empty stomachs. It's hard for them to learn. And so that really kind of hit home. I was all about the universal breakfast before, And when I saw that, it was even more hitting home to see the kind of things that we need to be doing to help with children. We talk about moving the academic needle. Unfortunately, our kids come to school with stomach issues that prevent that academic needle from moving. And so this is an opportunity. Dr. Winborn can share information with you if you want to go to hear what they're doing across the state. What stood out to me about this was those numbers are free and reduced. We are a county that sees a lot of that. We have schools that are high in that percentage. And so that's something we just need to be thinking about as a board.
Thank you, Dr. Van
All right. Next up, we have from Ms. Day, item from the School Board Trust.
Good evening, Mr. Richardson, board members. Tonight I bring to you some information that we received from the School Boards Association. It is a new policy that is part of our existing insurance policy, our existing errors and omissions and general liability fund. This is a policy for active shooter workplace violence crisis response group insurance policy. And so this is no additional cost to the district. It is part of our existing policy. And you've got a brochure, I think, both in your folder and on board docs that gives you the information about what this policy covers. But it's just a new insurance policy, part of our insurance policy, and wanted to bring it to you as information.
Any questions for Ms. Day?
Obviously, that didn't cost us anything.
That's a great thing.
That's a great one.
Free is our favorite word. All right. We've reached the point of the agenda where we'll announce a 10-minute break before closed session. If I can have a motion to go into closed session.
Motion.
All right. A second. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. We'll have a 10-minute break before closed session. All right. So before we pick back up on the conversation, we can have a motion to approve certified personnel.
Motion.
Second. Motion by Mr. Udy and second by Mr. Mims. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed? All right. If I can have a motion to approve classified personnel.
So moved.
All right. Got a motion for Mr. Peets and a second? For Ms. Allred. All right. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Would you rather pick up on that now or talk about the board meeting dates? Since we're kind of talking about that.
I think it sounds like it's part of it. So the question that has come up is, how do we handle getting to the commissioners meeting in January? And unfortunately, there's not another meeting for you guys between when we find out what they're planning. So perhaps the best thing we can do is just, I understand the sense of the board that you want me and at least me and Stan to be there, and we'll work with the chair and the superintendent to schedule that in the least disruptive way possible for the school board. And if it looks like it's going to be a big thing and we need to look at our meeting date for January, then we can come back to you and ask for a quick special meeting and conference call or something. Because I don't know how to advise you, not knowing what they're going to do. Go ahead.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I guess the question that I have is will there be any communications with the board or the commissioners prior to that meeting? Because as I indicated, they're not going to walk into the meeting and start deciding what they want to do. The discussions, the telephone calls, and the whatever communications will have already taken place.
I think
so
that's
if
a
you're
very
really
good
serious about it, you need to lay some groundwork before.
I think that's an excellent point. And
Yeah, the liaison meeting is scheduled for tomorrow morning, so that can definitely be one of the items that's discussed with them.
But if we find that they are, I mean, they were very vague about what they're going to discuss in January, but if we find that they are going to take up this appeal, then I agree, Mr. Mims, that we ought to send sort of our written bullet points, before the holidays.
Would they not, to do something of this magnitude, would they not have to have a formal appeals process?
Well, again, the law is very vague, but that would certainly make sense. And if they were going to do that, then it's possible that what they're planning to do, the January meeting, is decide on a process. So it's just, they were very vague about what's on the agenda for January, so.
What Steve had said was that there were such thin ice because they're trying, he indicated, if I remember correctly, they were using the law that states if it's available and they're ready to rent it now. And it's not. I mean, they're not ready to rent it now, and we had indicated we went out for the appraisal back early summer. I mean, long before they ever, this was a glint in their eye, we had already taken steps to sell the property.
Right.
So Steve was indicating that they're on very thin ice and that they know.
I think that's, yes.
So I think we ought to, someone convey that to the board at your meeting tomorrow too, that the law they're trying to apply just isn't applicable. That we decided to sell this property last spring, long before they ever, Yeah, and then we took another vote based on the latest developments, but that vote basically confirmed what we were looking into by doing the appraisal and paying for the appraisal.
Right.
And I would suspect if you looked at all three of the facilities we've dealt with, the Creedmoor, the two at Creedmoor, we've gotten an appraisal. There has been time in between before we've acted, and I suspect the time frame on Toller parallels what we've done on the other two properties. So their argument is going to be that we made this decision after they asked for and that's why we're doing it.
I still think would be okay, but I also think that you started this process before you ever got this request.
And if it does parallel, then what we have clearly shown is that this is the way and the time frame that we've used for other facilities. Anyway.
Okay. Other comments regarding that?
Question.
Yes, sir.
Concerning the liaison. In the past, the chair and vice chair have attended meetings, and I'm curious about, since the meeting's tomorrow, Tom has been there, should we expect him to continue to do this at least through tomorrow?
I would personally like that just for the fact of having that
Not
transition over.
In reflection on you, sir.
Excuse me, I'll be in Irvine tomorrow. Because that was going to be one of my questions. Are their meetings set in stone? Because I won't be able to be there on Tuesdays.
Yeah,
They're not set in stone. We typically work with Mike Phelps, and they work with their team. But the one tomorrow has been set for about a month, to be very honest. So we've asked Dr. Houlihan to join us.
May I just interject something?
Yes, sir.
They had an organization meeting tonight as well. So did you know who's going to show up?
So it's not typically been their officers, but it's been the same two at least the last couple of years. Cozart and Karen.
Yeah, it's been at least 3-4 years.
Right.
And before, when we first started all this, years ago, it was Dave Curran and Tony Cozart.
Yeah, Tony's been there for years.
Right. So it's not always been, I guess, their officers. Because I'm sure Dave wasn't a chair. Anyway, they just do it a little bit different. All right. Do you? No, never mind. Okay. Excuse me.
So we have those two as agenda topics tomorrow, the Joe Toller property and the Hawley property.
But I would say, certainly, assuming we get some clarity between the liaisons and me trying to talk some more to the county attorney now that he's had tonight's meeting, about what the process is going to be, if this is going to be considered in January, that I would certainly write them a letter ahead of time outlining why this is not make sense.
Well, my concern about Jim Wren is that his kids go to a charter school. And I certainly wouldn't want him to have a bias in one way or the other. I'm not saying he would, but he's human.
Dr. Houlihan, you heard, and as a matter of fact, I think I heard you say Dan Forrest, and said that he wanted every public school to be a charter school. I think Tim Karen is number one advocate in Granville County.
Yeah, yeah. True, I hadn't thought of that. I follow you, yes.
Yeah, I think, Jim, I'd be surprised if Jim didn't handle this objectively and professionally.
Well, I hope you're right. I mean, I'm not saying he wouldn't. I'm just saying that he meant, well,
He advised that board, so, can't help it. We got to do what we got to do. Fight for what we got to do. If it becomes necessary, that's all I can say.
Tonight, you were given a list of board dates that I believe we had already discussed for 2019-2020. The first Monday night being our regular board session, and then the third Monday night being our work session. Want to make you aware of two adjustments. We've just talked about we did not believe we needed a December work session. Is everybody in agreement with that?
Thank you.
Okay. And then for January, if you remember correctly, when we talked last Monday, the 20th is actually Martin Luther King holiday. We had talked about moving ours to the very next day, the 21st, so that we could be available to meet with the Restart schools. And I believe we have that at 2 o'clock, and that is at West Oxford. And as we,
on the 21st?
21st.
I have a question about the February 3rd meeting. That is President's Day. That is not a holiday for Granville County Schools? Okay. It's fine with me. I just want to make sure.
We're in school. Let's let Dr. Winborn check.
And do remember
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the 17th, the work session. It's President's Day. Okay. That's fine. I just wanted to make sure.
And remember, in April, we typically schedule a few more budget meetings. Who knows what we'll do come we ever get a budget. So.
I hope to have one. The rest of these work for me.
At the bottom of your agenda, you see those upcoming dates. One thing to put on your calendar, if you could, is make sure if you are available for Friday, January 24th, for winter graduation. It's always a special night. Is there anything else not on the agenda? Yes, Mr. Moore?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you for recognizing me. And I think ever since the November election, the people have wondered what I would do because in North Carolina you can't hold two elected positions. And I met with Tanya Burnett at the Board of Elections, I guess a couple of weeks ago, and we discussed this, and I asked her to explain the process. This is necessary because on July 3rd, my life, in essence, changed. And what happened on July the 3rd, a good friend of mine, former Commissioner Tom Jackson, passed. And Commissioner Jackson had requested while he was in the hospital that I identify how he could file to run for county commissioner, and he knew that he wouldn't be able to go door to door, and he indicated that he would use a mailing process to contact the voters, and I had done that. So we had basically identified how he needed to have things notarized so he would be able to file. Had Tom lived, I would never have and never intended to put my name on the ballot for city commissioner pre-mail. The turning point was Tom shared with me a list of 25 reasons why there needed to be change in the city of Creedmoor. I didn't agree with all 25, maybe 22 or 23, but he had researched it and he had documented it well, the reasons he thought change needed to be made. So I had to do an internal assessment. If I really believed what Tom had presented to me, and knowing that he passed, what would I do? And I debated that for a couple of weeks. As a matter of fact, he passed on July the 3rd. The filing date ended July 18th, and I was next to the last person to file. I filed on July 17th. Georgiana Kaczynski filed after me. So it wasn't a matter that I took lightly. And as such, since that time of the election, I have been debating what I'm going to do. And I have until the 11th of December, which is the organization meeting for the city of Creedmoor, to decide. However, in fairness to the board and in fairness to decision-making process, I have made my decision, and I'm ready to share my decision with you now. And I have a letter that for you and one for the attorney. If I can just take 2 or 3 minutes to get us out of here before 9, since I know this is probably the final thing on the agenda, but this is from Ed Mims, and it's to the chairman of the board, because when I drafted this afternoon, I wasn't sure. And it says, Dear Board Chair, on November 5th, 2019, the citizens of Creedmoor, North Carolina, sent a strong, undeniable message when they eliminated all 3 incumbents running for re-election by voting each of them out of office. I am honored as a beneficiary of the voters' trust and confidence by being elected to help move Creedmoor forward. Moving forward requires a dedication to strong citizen representation, a clear strategic vision, honesty, and a commitment to fiscal responsibility as the community seeks a chance for real transformation and cooperation. I believe the message delivered by the City of Creedmoor voters will reverberate throughout Granville County. While considering my final decision over the Thanksgiving weekend, I read a quote from Michael Bennett, a player on the Dallas Cowboys football team, after their loss on Thanksgiving Day. He said, and I quote, "The enemy against greatness is the unwillingness to change. We've got to be able to change some of the things that we've been doing to demand more from ourselves and become the people we want to be," unquote. The voters in District 5 have afforded me the opportunity to serve them in various capacities over the last 7 years, and for that, I'm deeply grateful. The voters in Creedmoor during the most recent municipal election expressed their preference that I continue my service, but more directly to the community in which I live. Therefore, effective today, December 2nd, 2019, at 11:59 p.m., I am officially resigning as a member of the Granville County Board of Education. Sincerely, Ed Mims.
Mr. Mims, on behalf of the board and behalf of myself, I want to thank you for your service to the board. I know you and I have not seen eye to eye on every issue, but I appreciate how much you have meant to us about process and how much you have meant to us for the children of Granville County, and wish you well in your new endeavors. I know Creedmoor will experience good leadership by having you there.
Thanks so much.
I appreciate your service.
And congratulations on your election, and I only want great things for the Granville County Public Schools.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills.
Board members, anybody else?
We
I'd like to echo that. I think I think even though you and I have not always agreed, I think that your honesty, your passion, your sense of urgency, trying to move things along, will be missed. And I appreciate what you've done. I also think City of Creedmoor is going to get a darn good city commissioner. So I wish you all the absolute best.
I'd hate to be the city manager. You guys are going to go in there and you're going to really make change, aren't you?
Well, I haven't been sworn in yet, so I
You
don't
can't
want
say
to.
that. That's true. That's true.
Mr. Mims, I thank you for the opportunity. You're one of the board members who brought me here, and I appreciate your confidence. I've enjoyed working with you on this board. I've enjoyed your leadership, and I wish you nothing but the best. You and Miss Dell, both, please give her my best, but I'm happy for you, and I appreciate all you've done and the work we've done together.
Thank you, and congratulations on the new potential son-in-law.
I have a son coming. Thank you, Mr. Mills. And I still have your number.
Strong education supporter down in Creedmoor is what we need.
Absolutely.
All right. Anybody else?
All right.
All right. Anything else? All right. I'd like to have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. 9:01. Just want to point that out.
Well, that's, you missed it, buddy.
I do want to tell you all just real quickly, I appreciate the opportunity to serve you in this way and look forward to serving alongside of you. So be a good year for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.